Mr. Venkateshwarlu, Mr. Arulole, Mr. Murali, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege and honor to be here to be a part of the 42nd Mega Regional Conference of the SIRC, and I thank the organizers for giving me this privilege and honor. We are here to discuss the tax implications of NRI taxation. Today we are witnessing a huge amount of cross-border movements. Cross-border movements of goods and services is one segment. Cross-border movements of labor and capital on the other. These two segments have their own ramifications and tax implications. We are today looking at the aspect of the cross-border movement of capital and labor. A person is able to go out of the country, earn resources, earn incomes there, or repatriate the monies there, or make investments there. In the process of going out of the country, establishing himself there, earning some incomes there, and coming back into the country, we have certain tax ramifications of the various activities that he conducts and the various incomes that he earns. The NRI taxation, what do we mean by an NRI for the purpose of our discussion, therefore, in my opinion, would include both that individual who leaves this country for the purpose of a job or a business outside the country, as a result of which he becomes a non-resident. It also includes, in my opinion, a person who comes into this country for permanent settlement, or at least for the initial years of his stay, when he has the status of a not ordinarily resident. He is a person, therefore, who is basically an NRI, who comes back into this country and has incomes from activities within the country as well as what he has accumulated outside this country. And we therefore are asked or required to examine the gamut of the tax implications of both income that are arising or accruing within this country as well as those that are outside this country. Before we go into the aspects, we need to have a broad overview of the tax provisions that impact a person who is a non-resident. How do you become a non-resident? You become a non-resident as far as the individual is concerned by virtue of a physical presence test as is laid down in Section 6 of the Income Tax Act. If you are a resident, you may also acquire the status of a not ordinary resident on fulfilling the conditions laid down in Section 6, subsection 6 of the Income Tax Act. These are on the basis of physical presence test. Different countries may have the determination of residence not necessarily dependent solely upon the physical presence test, but may go beyond that also. For example, US would say, if you are a citizen of my country, you are a resident of USA, irrespective of whether you are physically present in USA or you are outside of USA. Sometimes some other countries would say, I would look into your domicile aspect. If you're domiciled in this particular country, then I look at your tax liability as though you are a resident of this country concerned. The earlier conventions when they began, they were looking at citizenship as a basis of entering into or determination of the tax liabilities concerned. Some countries today also look at whether you are a taxpayer in that country. They don't look at your citizenship, they don't look at your nationality, they don't look at your domiciliation, they look at whether you are a person who is liable to pay tax in that country, as a result of which they say the treaty entitlement should be applicable to you. By and large, across the world, by and large, on a basis of consensus, countries have agreed that we need to look at the residence as a basis of taxation, and for that purpose they say the residence is going to be determined on the basis of physical presence of a particular person. If you don't satisfy the physical presence test, then you become a non-resident. Once you are a non-resident, as far as Income Tax Act is concerned, Section 5, subsection 2 will determine the scope of total income of a non-resident. That Section 5.2 says, incomes accruing or arising in this country or incomes received in this country are taxable, meaning thereby what is received by you outside, what is accruing to you outside this country shall not or should not form part of the total income of that non-resident concern. This section 5 and section 6 are the most critical sections for a non-resident taxation, and it is on a study of these two sections that one does find out interesting facets that may come about for us as professionals to grapple about and advise our clients accordingly. We will have an occasion to refer to these interesting facets of a non-resident taxation arising out of or born out of an interplay between sections 5, section 6 and section 9. Section 9 is again important because section 9 deems certain incomes to be accruing or arising in this country, although the actual locale of that income is at some other place. Section 9 says, no, disregarding the actual locale of income, we will pull those incomes and deem that the actual locale of the income or the place of accrual of income shall be deemed to be in India. So it's a, should I say, a interplay between these sections could give rise to certain interesting points for us as professionals to be aware of. And once we are aware of this, we can then advise our clients properly. And possibly with the limited span of time available, we'll not be able to discuss all the issues that are relevant as far as non-resident taxation is concerned, but at least look at certain broad emerging issues and interesting aspects, and in the process of discussion, try and evolve certain principles which will be with us when we advise our clients concerned. Section 5 talks about source of income. If the source of income is in India, then you are liable to pay tax in India. We have to understand always what do we mean by the source of income. How do you associate ourselves with the source of income concept? Not very easily defined. Over a period of time, for the last so many years, although we have had so many decisions concerned, one does not find a very clear definition of what constitutes a source of income. But broadly, one could say that a source of income refers to either a person, refers to an asset, or refers to an activity. Either a person, an asset, or an activity can constitute a source of income. If you're carrying on an activity here, that could give rise to a source of income here. If you have an asset in India, maybe a tangible asset, maybe an intangible asset, income from that can be giving rise to a source of income in India. If the person is physically present here as an employee, that could itself be regarded as a source of income for a person concerned. And therefore, either a person or an asset or an activity could give rise to a source of income in India. When we talk about this aspect of accruing in India, an interesting situation that arises is whether it is just the place of accrual that is important or timing also is very critical. Which are the two facets that are important? Is the place of accrual very important or the timing of the event very important? One can answer this question or one can understand the ramifications of this question if we take a classical example of an employee stock option plans. ESOP plans are granted to an employee for good work done for a company concern. So because of my good work, my employer tells me you are entitled to become a shareholder of this company by subscribing to the shares at a concessional rate. ESOP proceeds over 4 or 5 stages. First is the grant of the options concerned, then is the vesting of the options concerned, then is the exercise of the options concerned, then is the transfer of these options to realize the gains. I have worked today. My service has happened today. On the basis of the quality of service, my employer grants me a stock option concern. So the timing is on the date I am given stock options concern, and that is a recognition of the services I have performed for an organization. I have already performed. The question therefore arises is, my performance of services gives rise to the stock option that I am going to get from a company concern. I have to wait for the stock options to vest in me, and thereafter I have to exercise the stock options concern. In India,